My name is Stacy Renee. I'm a mindset coach, life on life's terms coach, because life is laughing indeed. So our hashtags tonight are going to be mental health. It's Mental Health Month, and mindset coach, life coach. We're going to be talking about something that tonight that someone asked me to talk about. We're not going to be talking about how you control somebody with these disorders, because I'm not a professional with this type of stuff, with the disorders themselves. Adapting is what we've talked about, as in the ACE test. So I'm just taking one more deeper dive into the ACE scores and the mental health and the cluster B personality disorders and boundaries, because so many people talk about some of the cluster B personality disorders, and people are affected by those. So again, remember, I'm a coach. I'm not a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I recommend to you all Dr. Ramani for some of these, and there's also Todd Grande. He's good with a lot of these too. Thank you for those hearts. Is that you, Kim? So, yeah. So those are, who. Ramon, hello. What are you doing? So I hope y'all will enjoy the live tonight. I'm going to move it up. Well, Friday night, I'm just going to start moving the evening lives up 1 hour to 6 o'clock. So, because I have a meditation after this. Good evening, Mom. I have a meditation after this. And so this way I won't be late for meditation if I move this up an hour. And it's kind of preparing me for when daylight savings times comes again. Trying not to get in trouble. Good. Good. We like that over here. Yes, we like that. You're amazing. So, conscientious. Good husband. So we're going to talk about the ACE scores this evening. We're going to talk about mental health because it is Mental Health Month. And we're going to talk about the cluster B personality disorders and boundaries. A lot of people throw these disorders out there, like, they say it quite a bit without really knowing what it is, and some of them I'm not even that familiar with. So just for both of us, for learning purpose, for all of us in learning purposes, we're going to take a deep dive into that and how that might affect you. And then what you can do. As I said earlier in the short, is that this isn't about just calling people names, labeling somebody and all of this, because anybody could have these things. And the reality is that hurt people hurt people. And a lot of these people with these disorders are deeply hurt, deeply wounded. Well, good. I'm glad you got to eat, Mom. Grinch and I love you too. So, all right. So here we're going to start getting into it. I want to thank you all for being here. If this resonates with you, I hope that this will be helpful for those of you who may, have grown up with some of these disorders. So I'm going to get into my notes here, because there's a lot of you here, and I have notes just so if I get into the comments, then I don't get confused. I can go back on track. Okay. So here we grow. Here we grow. So understanding trauma and relationship patterns and healing. We're going to talk about, how this affects you. We're going to talk about, first off, we're going to talk about, the pain. And then we're going to talk about what this covers. Okay. So here we grow. What is going on here? It's got all these nice pictures that I posted in here, and I'll make a post with them. So have you ever found yourself, this is the deal, Kim's listening but playing with her garden. Well, her garden's looking really good. Did she get the red mulch? So have you ever, found yourself in relationships where you feel emotionally drained, confused, overly responsible for someone else's emotions, right? Or like you're constantly walking on eggshells? Anybody here feel that way? Not yet. Well, good, Ramon. You are being good. You are. So then maybe you've asked yourself, or anybody who is in here who has experienced that, maybe you've asked yourself, why do I keep attracting emotionally unavailable or chaotic people? I know a lot of people who ask that. Crunch. Not yet. Why do the eggshells? What's the latest and the earliest age you think is good for marriage, in your opinion? Are you going to breed? Because, it's like if you want to have children or not have children. And, I believe that The thing is that the longer you can wait, the more mature you will be. Now, I'm not saying 30s, 40s, but I'm just saying after 21 or at least, and then 30s is good, but there's no age that's going to guarantee your marriage. There's no age that will guarantee it. What we're talking about here, breeding is the whole point. Well, you're probably going to want to get married by about 30s for sure if you're going to breed. That's what I'm saying. Because breeding is a thing. So yes, about 30s, you could do that. There's still time to be breeding. Okay. I have people from everywhere, all age groups on here. So thank you for your question. Okay. So sometimes people may over explain or over function in relationships. And I hope that you'll stay plus. Oh, okay. 26, father time creeping up. It is creeping up, isn't it? Thank you, Logan. So the thing is that if you're dealing with anyone with any of these kind of personality traits, you may want to listen so that you could either be a supportive partner or also to be able to manage your own emotions. Okay. So why do certain relationships feel so intense, addictive, or exhausting? See, as we get older, we may like these very dysfunctional relationships. We may think they're passionate. We may think, that if we have a regular relationship, a healthy relationship, that it's boring. But as we get older, we don't find them boring anymore. We don't. So, sometimes the struggles that we have Hey, Rodolfo, I'm glad you're here because this is for you, darling. You wanted me to talk about these personality disorders. So I did my research and here we are. So I'm glad that you're here so we can test IQ first. Ramon's been married for 13 years. So he's got some experience there. He does a great job as a husband. So listen to Ramon. All right. So that what we're talking about tonight isn't about changing anybody with these personality disorders. You may be able to comfort them, you may not. So we're just going to explore this, okay? I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, so I'm not, if you want to talk, Dr. Todd Grande, he has good information here on YouTube. So does, some other people. We were just exploring this for Ramon, here. Axel Lopez. All right, well, that probably doesn't pertain to me. Thank you, iPlug. We're talking about boundaries tonight. We're talking about the ACE test. We're talking about Class B personality disorders, or Cluster B. All right. So sometimes the struggles we have in relationships today are connected to experiences we had long before we understood what was happening. So this goes back to the ACE, the adverse childhood evaluation for adults is what this is. So we're going to talk about a little of that, but before we do, I'm going to do my disclaimer once again. Okay. All right. Hey, Robbie, I'm glad that you're here. Thank you. So here goes my disclaimer on our topic this evening. So before we begin, I want to be clear that I'm not a licensed psychologist, psychiatrist, or mental health clinician. I don't diagnose anybody, and I'm not trying to diagnose your people based on this live, Rodolfo, I want to avoid certain Okay, so this way you'll be able to recognize it because I'm going to give you, I went to the Mayo Clinic and I got some of the information on what these personality disorders are. I also looked at Psychology Today. Those are my references. So I don't diagnose anybody. So tonight's conversation is educational and based on trauma recovery, relational dynamics, and inner child healing, boundaries, and lived experience. Okay, so you're welcome to share here, but I'm not going to diagnose anything. Okay, so over the last few weeks, we've been discussing the ACE evaluation, trauma, boundaries, and many of you requested a conversation about borderline personality disorder. Hey, Treadmill. So, okay. So anyway, tonight we're going to explore that childhood trauma, attachment wounds, and certain personality structures that may impact relationships and adult coping patterns. So if you grew up with some of this, these might explain some of your coping patterns too, and how we would cope with someone who has these disorders. But please keep in mind that people with these disorders, Thank you, Rodolfo. Please remember people with these disorders are hurt. We are not calling them victims. We're not shaming anybody here. What we're doing is we're just going to discover things. Many of us have experienced these disorders from the hurt people, and it doesn't feel good. So I don't want you to deny your pain either. So we're not saying that, but remember, we're about empowering ourselves to learn and grow, just like Rodolfo said. So what we want to do is learn and grow and be able to understand the signs of these things. There's many people who have these kind of disorders who seek help, and it can be helped. Rodolfo is a nice person. So, part one, when we're looking at the ACE scores and childhood trauma, what is ACE? It's an adverse childhood experience, is what that is. This includes emotional abuse, if you grew up in these kind of atmospheres, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, addiction in the home, domestic violence, divorce, abandonment, mental illness in the household, and incarceration. So, these things will affect your childhood. And we get in these adult bodies and we think, oh, this doesn't bother me. And then we find out that it does. So the ACE scores help to identify these early trauma exposures. If you have so many, if you have over 4, then you've been deeply affected by this. So, it's an increased risk for addiction. When I'm talking about addiction, I'm not just talking about drug addiction or alcohol addiction. I'm talking about food addiction. I'm talking about shopping addiction. I'm talking about work addiction. I'm talking about any kind of addictions where we're, trying to make ourselves feel better from the outside in, the coping. We could have chronic illness, emotional dysregulation, and relationship dysfunction as a result of, low of our, well, high, I guess, ACE test scores. Doesn't mean that you will, but it's just a higher risk, okay? You are very welcome, Rodolfo. I'm glad. We're gonna keep going. All right. Hello, Gang of Drama. This is not a George Floyd channel, and thank you, Russell. Okay. The thing is trauma just doesn't disappear because the childhood ended. It often gets stored in your nervous system, your attachment style, and relationship patterns. So here's the second part of this today. Oh, yep, it's the wrong person. It's okay. So, did you grow up feeling like you had to earn love, manage chaos, or keep peace in your household? Russell, you are too young to be dating anybody like me, and I'm over in Mexico. Ain't nobody dating me over here. But so did any of you grow up with that? Did you grow up feeling like you had to earn love, manage chaos, or keep peace in your household? Pages Turner, you had a lot of ticks in the boxes. I just try to function as best as I can and try to leave the past in the past. That's usually what a lot of people do, Pages, but sometimes what we don't realize is it affects that central nervous system, like I was talking about earlier. Rodolfo, hell yes, I felt that way. See, a lot of times our central nervous system learned to be ready, to be prepared when hell was going to break loose, right? My glove, you're here. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. So sometimes we're preparing for all hell to break loose. And so we have suspicions of people because we don't trust people when we grow up in that environment. We didn't learn trust in that environment. So it's hard to trust ourselves. And that's what I want, us to learn how to do. There you go. There you go, Ramon. Here we go. Here we grow. We're going to learn some more. Many adults with trauma histories develop people pleasing, hypervigilance, fear of abandonment, over responsibility, perfectionism. There's a list here. Emotional suppression, rescue and fixing tendencies, and codependency. A lot of people aren't aware what codependency is. And so codependency is part of that fixing, part of the people pleasing, part of the feeling like you've got to do everything, being overly responsible. I once saw my mother's face full of blood because, oh no, Russell, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry to hear that. Pages. Yeah. Yes, they definitely need to be called the police on. This is the thing, what I do want to say about this is with these personality disorders, while I want you to have compassion and empathy, don't be afraid to call the police. If somebody gets, if they're violent, if they're, all of this, you need to call the police. Even if they're turning your furniture over, call the police because it starts with furniture and then the next thing. So we don't allow, I personally do not allow somebody to be breaking my things, turning furniture over, and do not put hands on. So what kept you safe as a child may be sabotaging your relationships as an adult is the thing. If you tested positive on the ACE test and you do have relationship problems. So examples of this is when you're reading everybody's mood. You're hyper focused on everybody's mood so that you feel safe, right? And avoiding conflict so you feel safe, or abandon yourself to keep a connection because you've invested in it. And domestic violence, they arrest both of them in the States. Yes, they do. They do, Ramon. It's hard to tell which one did it. Trust is a way easy to lose. Yes, it is. Thank you, my glove. Russell, it was when I was about 10 or 11, completely changed me. I don't think I can ever. Oh, Russell, yes, you can, but you need some healing. It wasn't good that you saw that. That is fearful. I'm sure that scared you to death. That would scare me to death. So many people don't realize how much another person's unmanaged mental health struggles, emotional dysregulation, or personality patterns can affect their nervous systems. When you grow up and that physical or mental abuse is not acceptable, I know. And physical abuse is blaring at us, right? As we can see when someone's physically abused. And I always say, if you're in a physically abusive relationship, you need to go. Mental abuse and emotional abuse, you probably need to go too, but that one's the slippery slope. If you can define what mental and emotional abuse is, a lot of us don't know what verbal abuse is, mental abuse, emotional abuse, because it was normal. So, hopefully, some information that I give you tonight will be able to help you understand what is normal and what is not normal. A lot of us, that's how we learned codependency was because somebody might have had an addictive personality or they might have had mental health problems. And so we learn to pick up the pieces. And that's part of codependency is when you learn to pick up the pieces. So examples, of your nervous system being overactive is emotional exhaustion, anxiety, self-doubt, confusion, walking on eggshells, and trauma bonding. Trauma bondage, you're going in the same relationship, different characters. Same relationship, different character. Pages Turner, there's good and bad in this world. The good make up for the bad. That's right. There is good and bad in this world because we live in an electromagnetic field. There's positive, negative, there's good, and there's bad. And everything is until it's not, right? It can be positive until it's not. It can be negative until it's not. Everything that's good will, if we overindulge, it's not going to be good anymore. Everything that's bad is meant for healing, or what we perceive bad is meant for healing or growth. So, sometimes we believe if we love someone enough, understand them enough, or help them enough, they'll heal. I know I did it too. I thought if I loved somebody enough, they would heal. I thought if I just could be better, because I took this personally, you see. I thought that I wasn't good enough when I couldn't help somebody. And they have to want help for you to be able to help somebody. That's why when I introduced this, I said you can't change them. They have to want to change. And some people will, and some people won't. Some people will, manipulate. That could be called trickery, right? So, Electra Erotica, yes. Okay. All right. Some of y'all are going to be silly. This, we're talking about some serious stuff. So if you want to be silly, then this one's not the channel. I came to troll, but you are a good person. Love you. Oh, thank you, Russell. I appreciate that you didn't troll. Thank you so much. See, this is why I try not to be mean, when I see somebody at first. But, I'm not going to pay attention to comments that aren't on topic. Rodolfo. My mom took all the punches, so we didn't have to. She didn't understand. Yes, she protected us physically. But yes, there's some survivor's guilt to that. That's like survivor's guilt. When you witness somebody else being abused, somebody else being hurt, and you're just a bystander, that's still survivor's guilt. There's a lot of guilt to that. So you are deeply impacted and affected, and the fear is instilled. And sometimes we're just skewed because we don't know if this, we get confused because I don't know, Rodolfo, if your mom went back and then left and went back and then left, but this sends mixed messages when that happens. Whew. So this is emotionally sticky content, y'all. It is. And I appreciate you all being here. So here we grow. We're going to keep diving into this. Many of us unconsciously were trying to heal others the way that we once hoped someone would heal us. Because I know that working with a lot of people, they're like, I know how it felt to be rejected, so I didn't want to be rejected. So we try to heal other people from our pain, and we have to heal our pain first. We'll never heal the pain through trying to heal somebody else before we heal our own. It's like when they're talking about the airplane, you got to put your mask on before you help somebody else put their mask on. And this is the same way with healing. Rodolfo, yes, back and forth. Yes, so that sends mixed messages when it goes back and forth because we leave because it's unsafe, and then we go back because everything's going to be just fine. This is where dysregulation, if you didn't know, that's what that word is, fragmentation and dysregulation, because our thoughts get confused and our central nervous system gets fragmented. So it's dysregulation in your breathing and everything, because when a child gets scared, they go, even adults, when we get scared, we're like, and when you do that, you're not breathing. So your brain's not getting oxygen. So we don't know how to cope with that. And a child wouldn't have the maturity to cope with it anyway. Mom took all the punches like his father had a limited number of punches and ran out. If you're not respectful in here, I'm going to have to put you out. You're going to have to be out because we're not going to tolerate any disrespect in here. So I don't know if that was meant for a disrespectful comment or not, but there will be no disrespect. I'm at the point of I'll help an individual until he or she makes it evident that the person isn't going to act on it right. You can't help anybody who won't help themselves. And sometimes people won't help themselves. Sometimes they think that this is just the way that it is. And even though you may help them, try to provide them resources, they keep going back into it. And so it's like, I can't do anything for you, you know? So what are cluster B personality disorders? Here we go, Rodolfo. So cluster B personality disorders are, you're right, no parent should fight in front of their child. That's not good. So they involve patterns that are often dramatic. If you're seeing all this drama, that's not, if it's not having, if it's scary, emotional, erratic, and rationally disruptive. It's just not rational. Like I said, when people are throwing your things, breaking your things, and being very dramatic and making a big deal out of something small. Thanks, my glove. Thank y'all. So, thank you. Okay. I love the way y'all support each other here. Thank you so much. So these are not bad people labels. Please understand that. Those are behaviors. So these are often deeply ingrained coping and attachment patterns and not character flaws. So these, if it's a pattern, we can retrain our patterns. Okay. Hello, Lewis. Okay. So these patterns that we're going to talk about, these personality disorders, they're deeply ingrained in coping and attachment patterns and not character flaws. Please remember that. So we're not going to, this isn't about being mean to people because they have a disorder. So borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. So not everyone with difficult behavior has a personality disorder. Some people are addicted to drama and chaos. That's a lot of times they're probably addicted to drama and chaos. They may be, I don't know. But it could be that they're addicted to drama and chaos because their central nervous system is amped up. Some people are addicted to chaos because they're afraid if things go calm that something's going to happen. Awesome. Thank you, Robbie. So not everyone with difficult behaviors has that personality disorder, okay? So the breakdown of the cluster B personality disorders, so you know what they are and what the traits of them are. So antisocial personality disorder, histrionic. Well, we're going to learn about it. We're going to learn about it, Ramon. Okay, so antisocial personality disorder. This is the disregard for the rules, disregard for the rights of others, and deceitfulness, manipulation, and aggressiveness. So that's antisocial. See, now, y'all, probably a lot of y'all would have thought that's just people who don't like to be around people, right? that's what I thought it was. So we're all learning here together. So it's disregard for rules, disregard for the rights of others, deceitfulness, manipulation, and aggressiveness. Some of these people you see on court TV, that's what that is. So borderline personality disorder. Can evil of a father be passed to the child? That's a good question, Pages Turner, because there is a transference of guilt. There's a transference of anger that gets passed to children sometimes. And what this means is, and this creates adults who are afraid, they're apologizing all the time because they'll feel guilty. Because when a child's playing, if an adult has a bad day, if a child grew up in a home where an adult had a bad day and the adult come home and asked them, they were just being a kid, and the kid got in trouble for being a kid, well, then the kid's going to think they're going to get in trouble for everything. And their natural response is to say that I'm sorry. And that's unearned guilt is what that is. There's a transference of anger when adults had a bad day and then they get mad at you and maybe give you a spanking or something for without asking questions. They may say, why did you do this? And then before you get a chance to answer, whoop your butt, and maybe that wasn't fair. And so that's a transference of anger. When you saw your parent be abused, that's a transference of anger, because all of this is when a person is mad at their self. A lot of times in these personality disorders, they may lash out at you, and you didn't deserve it. So you may take on unearned guilt. And that's why we will have a low self-esteem. Even if we're just watching that, we'll have a low self-esteem. I say no because you know what was done to you, and it's up to you to do with your own, right? Right? We can't be carrying that on. We have to do our healing work, or, be able to not. I may have missed some of the I'm in a relationship with this girl now. She comes from a really loving family. She expects so much from me, but I never saw what a loving relationship looks like, and I have no good examples. Ooh. Well, good for you that you got in that relationship, that you know a healthy relationship. So I hope that you won't carry those patterns, if you ever do get into a mess to where, I don't think you'll carry the patterns definitely of beating, but if you're, these fear-filled patterns, because I'm going to go into that later. So just hang in here, okay? Let's all be, very nice with our comments this evening. I'm not talking about what I use on my face, monkey. So we're talking about boundaries and borderline personality disorders. So intense emotions, fears of abandonment, unstable relationships, and identity issues. See, that's right, Ramon. So they too, with the identity issues, we talked about that. Remember, we talked about the different characters. Well, thank you, Monkey. But we talked about the different characters the other week of the roles that we take on when we're trying to people please, when we're trying to do, be accepted by people. We take on these different roles: the people pleaser, the caretaker, the rescuer, the rebel, and all these other roles. That was in last week. Okay. There we go. Okay, I'm not talking about pies this evening. All right. So everyone know what borderline personality disorder is? All right. So now we're going to go. Here we are, Ramon. Histrionic personality disorder. Borderline personality disorder runs heavily in my family. My best friend from teen years had the same traits. It comes from trauma too. The borderline personality disorder is that becoming different personalities to cope, right? So I don't even know what my Instagram is. Oh, my Instagram is Stacy_Renee for life. All right. No, I'm not a psychiatrist. Cycle one, Freddie. We are talking about the different effects that these have on things. Okay. So I am not a psychiatrist. Dr. Todd Grande is somebody that I refer people to as far as that kind of thing goes. But we're learning how to heal and deal with these different personality disorders and to be compassionate, but not also subjective ourselves to these things so that we know clearly what we're dealing with. A lot of people don't know what these things are, so this is just an information channel. It's not a diagnosis. Histrionic personality disorder. That would be dramatic behavior, inappropriate sexual or provocative behavior, need to be the center of attention. We see some of those on court TV too, don't we? All right. Now, a lot of people, yes, how to avoid being mistreated. Absolutely. About, if we're going to dive deeper into it. I just wanted to give you all information of what, the Mayo Clinic Psychology Today says about these disorders. I am not a psychiatrist. Pages Turner, thank you for being a voice when sometimes there's just silence. You are very welcome, darling. I'm glad that you're here. Thank you for being here. So the narcissistic personality disorder. Now we hear this one a lot, and this one gets thrown around a lot. Sometimes when people just don't like people, they get called a name, right? And this is what I want to avoid on here. This is why I'm giving this information, is because, first off, to humanize these people. Yay! Well, I'm glad that you're here, Pam. I've only had to put one person out so far. So thank you. I'm glad you're here. So, on this narcissistic personality. So what I want us to do is to humanize and realize that when we're talking about hurt people, a lot of hurt people have these personality disorders, and so it doesn't mean that we subject ourselves to the hurt, but we don't want to villainize these people either. Because remember, we don't want to be a victim and we don't want to have villains in our lives. So it's about our healing, about recognizing if something was, if something, we dealt with any of these. Because if we dealt with any of these, we too will need healing, because it's not easy to deal with, but we're not saying that they're a villain. We're just saying that they were deeply wounded, and we'll get into talking about how if they you can't change them. So here we grow. This is what narcissistic personality disorder actually is. Feeling superior or special. Lack of empathy. They're not going to have empathy. The need for admiration. Exploiting others. And sensitive to rejection. They will think, when they will think that just because you say, hey, you forgot this, that sometimes you would it's like you did something awful by telling them, hey, did you forget this? Or can you bring this? It's like, oh. All right. Hello, Nick in Iran. It's good to see you. Thank you all for being here. So now you know what those cluster B personality disorders are. So now we're going to talk about the effects that borderline personality disorder will have on you. Like if your family, like someone mentioned, like Rodolfo said, if your family has a history of that. So the core wound is the fear of abandonment. So you have to remember, yes. Yeah, well, you're not weak. You're a strong person, Rodolfo, because you are seeking what you can do for yourself. And that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. So you're doing good. Okay. So the core wound, though, I do want to humanize it, but I'm not trying to tell you to subject yourself. I'm just trying to give you information so that we don't think that it's about us, first off, because I know when I was trying to fix people, I thought that it was my fault that they couldn't be fixed, and it's not. They have to want to fix themselves. But the core wound of a person with borderline personality disorder is their fear of abandonment is the core wound. And so their common patterns are unstable relationships, emotional highs and lows, and impulsivity, black and white thinking, it's just got to be this way or that way, rage episodes, idealization and devaluation, so that they may think you're really great at first, and then every time you turn around, you're being devalued, emptiness, and fear of rejection. These are ways that they may try to get control. I know when I did passive aggressiveness to try to get control, because it can be learned behaviors. We can unlearn learned behaviors. So the simple summary of this is that they'll say, don't leave me. They don't want you to leave them. So they're trying to gain that control, and it's mental abuse is what it can amount to. So underneath these behaviors is a profound emotional pain, shame, abandonment trauma, and dysregulation. But comparison doesn't require tolerating abuse. Compassion doesn't require tolerating abuse. This is not for you to be abused, okay? My love, narcissistic personality sounds like my sister believing her half of humanity is superior to the male half. Wow. Yeah, see, I don't diagnose, but we all know that feeling of when we're dealing with that. And just remember, you are not weak. You cannot, you don't want to keep seeing them as villains. I totally get it. Is that you don't have to subject yourself to the poor, if you feel bad being around a person, and you haven't done anything wrong, then, hey, Angela, it's good to see you tonight. So, and you haven't done anything wrong. See, a lot of people go around apologizing. It's like, well, did you do anything wrong? And I had to stop myself. I used to apologize a lot too. And I had to stop myself or when I thought somebody was mad at me because of unearned guilt, because they wouldn't speak to me or they didn't speak to me. Then I would think, oh, they didn't speak to me. They're mad at me. They're not always mad at you. Sometimes they're like me. They're just like all in their head, you know? And so sometimes people are all in their head, or sometimes they're dealing with things we don't know anything about. So just because somebody doesn't speak to us doesn't mean they're mad at us. I hear you, Rodolfo. And so I want you to start thinking, did I do anything wrong? Because even saying we're sorry, our words are of value. What do I say? Our words are expressions of our thoughts. And if we're saying I'm sorry all the time and you didn't do anything wrong, so I hope this is going to be helpful for you tonight, Rodolfo. So narcissistic personality disorder. Mom said, now you have two problems. Yes. Yes, Ramon. And we're going to look at narcissistic personality disorder. We talk a lot about that on here, people with but I want us to understand what these disorders are, where they come from, so we can humanize people, but not subject ourselves to abuse. Okay? So that's a fragile self-worth protected by grandiosity or defensiveness. Like I said, if you just ask them, hey, did you forget this? And they may go off on a tangent. You may be in all kinds of trouble. The one you had at the one you made up. Yep. That's right. That's right. Thanks, Ramon. JD Dula, my ex was definitely a narcissist. Thank you for explaining it. Well, here we grow. Here it is. The patterns for narcissistic personality disorder. Yes, codependents do feel, uncomfortable when people around them are angry. They do. They want to fix it a lot of times. But sometimes it's not our responsibility to fix it. So I hope that this will help, because we're going to get into that too. So the patterns for narcissistic personality disorder are need for admiration, entitlement, low empathy, blame shifting, defensiveness. Because this is the thing, when you ask them something or say, they'll like put it back on you. They'll say, oh, well, if you say, well, this hurt my feelings, they'll say, well, what about when you did this? That's childish behavior. Defensiveness, inability to tolerate criticism. exploitive tendencies. And so what they're saying is they want to be validated. That's what they want, is they pat themselves on the back all the time. They're the greatest. And underneath it, that wounded self, that wounded child has shame, insecurity, and a fragile identity. Maybe they grew up with a, superstar brother or sister. Oh, congratulations, my glove. I'm glad to hear that. So it's about, sometimes they were overlooked in the family. Somebody like that, and with that disorder, not like that, but with that disorder. So, yeah. Ramon says, good luck, my glove. So, histrionic personality disorder. Now, you're going to find a lot of this on court TV. A lot of these personality disorders there because people will act out when they're in pain, and sometimes they don't think about the regards of other people. So, the need to be seen, reassured, and validated with the histrionic personality disorder. Dramatic emotional expression, attention seeking, discomfort not being the center of attention, rapidly shifting emotions, and exaggerated presentation. So what they're saying is, notice me, notice me. But the insight to that is these attention seeking behaviors are often attachment seeking behaviors, is they want someone to be theirs. They need somebody just theirs, their own. Unrealistically, maybe. And then 4, antisocial personality disorder. The core issue for that is that the disregard for others' rights or well-being. So the patterns for that are deception, impulsivity, manipulation, aggression, lack of remorse, and rule breaking. I bet Ramon and Kim work with some of those. I know some people here that work with some of those. So what there is, the antisocial personality disorder is that the rules don't apply to me. Yes. And then that not every selfish, manipulative person, has this. Yeah. Hey, Ramon. So how long do these dynamics affect loved ones? If you grew up in dysfunction, cluster B dynamics can feel familiar. So if these people are on court TV, they're likely in prison, was what I was saying. They're likely going there. So how these dynamics affect loved ones. So when we talked about incarceration on the ACE test, when we talked about mental health, when we talked about, dysfunction in the family, the violence in the family, these things impact those personalities as well. So if you grew up in dysfunction, cluster B dynamics can feel familiar. Those things, like Rodolfo was saying, those things can feel familiar if you grew up in that kind of family. So when somebody's acting that way, until we heal it within ourselves, with the effect that it had on us, we may be drawn, accept that kind of behavior, is all that I'm saying. Hello from England, John Horse. All right. So how these dynamics affect loved ones if you grew up in any of those atmospheres. If you grew up in dysfunction, here they are. They can create trauma bonds, emotional addiction, resenting, overfunctioning, this means going back and forth, overfunctioning, confusion, guilt, and loss of identity. So we often mistake familiarity with compatibility. See, that's the thing, is if you grew up in dysfunction, you may think that familiarity and that person may present themselves. I know that this has happened with me before. They may present themselves as somebody who has healed from this dysfunction. And so you're thinking they're going to be your hero, or that you match and you're compatible. But if no one's done anything to heal, then they haven't healed from the dysfunction. You had to read the room as a kid. You told your mom to stand on as a kid, told my mom to stand on a landmine. I don't know about that. Hey, Shanaka 7. How are you doing this evening? I am doing well. Thank you. All right. No, John Horse, I hope you didn't really do that. I hope you're not trolling. Right? Right, Ramon? Okay. Calm can feel boring when chaos was normalized. That's what I talked about earlier, right? So how do you deal? Here you go, Rodolfo. How do you deal with cluster B behaviors? So the thing is boundaries. We talked about that last week. Boundaries. Oh, thank you, Shanakia 7. I appreciate that. You had a bad mom and dad. Well, we still don't have them step on things, darling. All right. Minds and things. So, examples of boundaries is I will not continue conversations where yelling occurs. If somebody's yelling at you and scaring you, or, this causes dysregulation. And if we get into a relationship with somebody who does that same thing, then this can cause dysregulation. You're not even going to have any words. You can't even talk to anybody who's yelling at you. So being able to learn to say, I will not continue conversations where yelling occurs. And that's telling yourself that too, because remember I said we set boundaries with ourselves. So it's telling myself, I'm not going to continue conversations where yelling occurs. Narcissist overshare and talk to you as if they knew your entire life to gain your trust. Yes. Yes, Ramon. Yes. So, yes, a lot of times, I feel very uncomfortable and I will set that boundary when people start telling me what I think and how I feel. You think this, Stacy, or you feel like this. If they start telling me how I think and what I feel, then I tell them, you can't tell me what I think and how I feel. That's dangerous. Do not let people tell you how you think and what you feel. I don't tell people how they think and what they feel. I let people tell me what they think and how they feel, and then we talk about that. So here's another example of boundaries. If you insult me, I will disengage. I will disengage if you insult me. Friends that have alternative motive after 57 years got less than 15 mates. Huh. I'm thinking about that, John Horse. So another example of a boundary is I'm unavailable for manipulation and emotional abuse. I just like the first one. I know I don't know either, Ramon. I just like the first one though, about I will not continue conversations where yelling occurs. Because oftentimes if you tell somebody, especially somebody maybe it's been my experience with somebody I suspected had narcissistic personality traits, let's say traits, then if I would tell them they were being that manipulation and emotional abuse, they would say to me, no, you're manipulative and emotionally abusive. That's what they do, right? Right, Angela? That's what they do is no, you're manipulative and emotionally abusive. So I would just stick with, I will not continue conversations where yelling occurs. Disengaging without present and anger, nearly impossible for me. Oh no. Sometimes I'll tell people when they're yelling at me, or I have told people when they were yelling at me, that's not very nice. Resentment. I know. And resentment, yes. And they do, Angela, you do get intimidated when they have that. And so it's like not participating. I am not going to participate in this if you can keep from it. It's hard when you work, if that's your work environment. My God, I've had a buddy that when management didn't renew my lease, he goes to a new place, doesn't take me, the individual that helped him. Oh no. Oh no. I'm sorry, my glove. I hate that for you because you're a sweet person, Ramon. Or they ask a question that they don't like the answer that one gives. Yep. Sometimes people do that, but some of that, yes, some of that's their training, right? Is that some of this is the patterns that they see growing up somewhere. Some of this is patterns too. John Horse, you end up tearing yourself. you end up telling yourself to try to please everyone. This empath has had enough and has gone cold, except for a few. I know we talked about that last week. I hope you'll go watch my videos if you haven't subscribed, John Horse, because we talked about how we will take on these roles, and then it's like we do everything to try to please somebody, but yet we end up feeling the same way, abandoned, and we abandon ourselves to please other people sometimes. So a boundary is what you will do. Now, if they don't abide by your boundaries, we talked about that last week. Sometimes we talked about that in story time. John, if you can check out story time from Sunday, we talked about how, we had one example where one person learned how to set boundaries, loving, healthy boundaries, and then the other person did just have to walk away. Chosen Law. Hello, Chosen Law. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yes, it's true, Ramon. And my glove. He didn't like finding out he's not permitted over on newish premise. Yeah. Sometimes when people show us who they are, we got to believe them. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that we see, we just see. And so we don't need to have expectations that anything different. So I'm glad that you took care of yourself, because it is about taking care of yourself. So we validate feelings and not harmful behavior when you're setting boundaries. So if you have a child or a teenager or something like this, I understand you're upset, but I won't accept disrespect. And so an adult, I understand you're upset, but I won't accept disrespect. He didn't like finding out he's not. Oh, yeah, I said that. The wiggy. All right, Robbie. Oops, I nearly forgot to double tap the don't. Oh, it's okay. All right. So what we need to do when you're dealing with anyone with any of these personality disorders is the 3 C's. Now they talk about this in the Al-Anon meetings. If someone's dealing with an alcoholic and they go to Al-Anon, they talk about this. I didn't cause it. I can't control it, and I can't cure it. This is the same for those personality disorders, or if you're dealing with people with addiction or what have you. I didn't cause it. I can't control it, and I can't cure it. So no amount of help, unless they want help, is going to help. You can't just see their potential and say, oh, I just know they have so much potential. And then you trying to wear yourself out and they don't want help. Revenge. Revenge always backfires. Revenge backfires. Did I feel anxious? I felt very anxious, Angela. I felt anxious. The dogs felt anxious. Everybody felt anxious when I would get raged at and this. Everybody felt anxious. The whole house. The whole house. So yeah. So if you can remember, so yes, I did. I felt very anxious, and I felt half of a person was what I felt like, because I couldn't say anything, because if I said what I liked, then I would get it threatened, taken away. And if I, said what I didn't like, it would be like, yes, the poor animals. Yes, Rodolfo. Animals are very sensitive to these things. And, it's good if people can have, I think a lot of people who have, some trauma have the service animals and stuff. But sometimes if I'm trying to make sure I don't miss comments, but I'm not trying to comment on things that aren't on the topic. Yeah. Okay, John Horse. Yeah, it does make you more empty, because you can't live life as a whole person when you're walking on eggshells, or you're having to tell yourself to walk in the room. I have no thoughts or comments, because this person tries to take your identity from you, kind of. And so or tell you what you think and how you feel. And they're just like micromanaging. My glove, weird on how that goes. You're the villain when you stop falling for their baloney. Yeah, that's normal though. That is normal. Normal for them. That's not normal for us people, but that's normal for them. We had a situation where, some of us were treated wrong, and some people were fussing about it, and it's like, well, what do we expect? You know. So we had to learn to expect that they're going to act up when they don't get their way, you know? So then there's a stop and a jade. So do not justify, argue, defend, or explain your actions. Do not. Over-explaining only feeds unhealthy dynamics because it keeps that fight going. See, this is why I said I felt like half of a person, because I didn't have a side, really. And arguing, I didn't want to keep arguing, defend and explain. So it's best just not to deal with it, not subject yourself to it once you realize what it is and that you can't fix it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it. So don't justify, argue, defend, or explain. Okay. They prey on, if you have unearned guilt, then they will prey on that unearned guilt. They will make you feel this big. Sometimes people will. And I'm not saying to villainize them, I'm saying don't participate. Remove yourself when necessary. If behavior becomes abusive, and that's mentally, emotionally, physically, go right away if it's physically, but sometimes you don't know if it's mentally or emotionally. So I hope that this will be helpful. Narcissists don't want to solve any conflict. They just want to be winning, right? Exactly. That's been my experience too, Angela. Yes. Then they say you don't talk. Yeah. 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 So it's about learning your safety, being safe, So I hope that that's what people take away tonight, is that you have control of your safety. So can people, it's not the last section, but here's another section. Can people with BPD or cluster B heal? Yes, with treatment. They need treatment, especially with treatment. It's not like they're just going to wake up one day and say, I'm tired of being mean to you and subjecting you, because I don't think that they wake up and know when they're going to do this. I think when they start to feel insecure, they hand it on to you. That's what I think happens. Like I said, I'm not the psychiatrist, I'm not the psychologist, but I think that when they feel insecure, they transfer it to you. That's what I think. What do you think, Angela? Because you've dealt with this a lot. So the examples are dialectical, the ways that they could get help if they wanted help. Rodolfo, if they want help, but a lot of them won't. So you've got to figure out a way to take care of you. Dialectical behavior therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, trauma therapy, and attachment work. Because it's very controlling, right? So a diagnosis isn't a life sentence. I don't diagnose people, but if you know somebody, yes, people with BPD can heal. They have to want to heal, but they can heal. They can. So diagnosis isn't a life sentence, although if they go to prison, it could be. But Angela, you're totally right. Narcissists yes, they do project their insecurities onto you. It's a form of control, right? To keep you there because they fear that abandonment. They fear not being right because that was very important to them. Healing requires accountability, self-awareness, and willingness. So if somebody, they can heal if they want to, have accountability, self-awareness, and willingness. You can't do another person's healing for them, though, just like I said earlier, and you can't, heal your own pain through trying to heal somebody else. This is how we end up in these codependent narcissistic relationships. Is the codependent may be trying to heal the narcissist's pain and take it on, but they're not able to heal their own pain. Robbie, that's what I was saying the other day, Stacy, because it was my dad with a bad temper and I was walking on eggshells. I ran away from home at the age of 14 to escape it. Yeah. As we will run away. We will. As we talked about that, with the attraction and repulsion. And so typically anytime anybody gets loud, if you've dealt with an abusive, background or had any of that, dealt with any of that dysfunction, then you will not want to be a part. When somebody's voice gets loud, you automatically cringe. That's right. They do blame you. They do. There's one narcissist doctor that's on here, the Sam, what's his name? Do you remember who it is, Angela? There's Sam, I believe it starts with a V. But anyway, he is he said he's a narcissist, so he talks about narcissism very honestly and frankly about, the ways that, they do. He gives you firsthand, information on narcissists. Sam Barkham, I believe is his name. Valken, yes, exactly. So, all right, here's how to stop attracting dysregulated or emotionally unavailable people. Is you're not doomed. You're not doomed. So you just need to heal what feels familiar is all. How about that? You just need to heal what feels familiar. You just need to work on the abandonment wounds, self-worth, attachment style, nervous system regulation, and your boundaries, what we were talking about. Slow those relationships down. A lot of people jump into relationships like that. They're just attracted too soon. And the thing is if we don't know if we are attracting someone who could hurt us. So it's about getting to know other people first. That is good, computer fists. So look for, when you do slow things down, look for consistency, look for availability and accountability and the calmness. I know, right, Robbie? Right, Angela? Yeah. That is hard. But Robbie's an amazing man, having learned and grown from it. Ogford Doggy. All right, no, we're not doing that. So emotional availability is very important. So take your time because you're worth it. You're worth it. When we have anxious attachment, sometimes people are afraid that somebody's going to get away. Yes, Angela, consistency instead of intensity. Exactly. Exactly. Don't jump in too fast because I know a lot of people, when they have that anxious attachment and they're afraid someone's going to get away, they are like grabbing on. What's meant for us will be there. It's not, we don't have to worry about it getting away. It's when we let people get to know us and don't grab on. Consistency is the key. That was my word for the day, my glove. Consistency. Well, it was the letter C because I'm doing self-esteem alphabet on Facebook. And so every Monday I do, like we did A, because a lot of people just answer with words like fine or good when they're asked how they're doing, or they only think about these things and they're not really, our words are important, And so we did this in karate, as is to say, I'm amazing, I'm brilliant. And today it was like consistency, because there was a part of me that didn't even want to get on Facebook this morning. There was a part of me. And then I was like, we're doing C today, Stacy. You got to get on Facebook. And so it's like, oh yeah, consistency, because consistency is important. Even in our daily activities, consistency is important. Every once in a while, take a break, but it's not a break if we're not consistent, right? So you hate Facebook. It can be negative. I get to see a lot of good positive stuff. My algorithm feeds a lot of good positive stuff. I got to see Richie Sambora give his daughter Ava away today on Facebook. I got to see, his daughter got married, his and Heather Locklear's daughter. Yeah, yeah. Angela, did you have an anxious attachment style? Did you heal? Yes, I did have an anxious attachment style, and I did heal my anxious attachment style. That fear of abandonment, it goes deep, and so sometimes that anxious attachment happens when we don't heal the feeling of feeling good enough. And that's what, if I didn't feel good enough, I always had to prove it. Y'all hear me talking about proving it a lot. So proving it meant being able to capture a person, right? The avoidant usually, because that was my lesson to learn, is that I went with what I was used to, an emotionally unavailable person. And usually the avoidant is an emotionally unavailable person. And so I did have that anxious attachment to where, I wanted to capture them. And if I could capture them and control them, then I would have self-esteem, right? But no, no. What it does is it repulses them, actually. I can't control anybody but myself. And so I had to learn that. I learned control in the house I grew up in because it was so out of control that I wanted to control things. This is what I mean by, not upbringing is a huge factor, folk who. And you're consistent with your coins, my glove? That's good. I know you are. That's amazing. So, Rodolfo, are you still here? I hope that this has been helpful. I hope you'll learn to set these boundaries. Learning how to be gentle with yourself. Yes. All right, good. Was this helpful? Did it help give you some information? Because I hope that it gave you some hope. I really do. So the conversations, isn't about diagnosing your ex or your parent or your spouse or your friends. Good, good. I'm glad it was helpful. Thank you, my glove. I'm glad it was helpful. So it's not about diagnosing the people around us. What it is about is for us to be able to learn to set the boundaries and to have an understanding of the patterns and protecting your own mental health. This is Mental Health Month. So protecting your mental health, understanding that there are people who are hurt, that have these personality disorders. I appreciate you too. There are people that are hurt that have these personality disorders. We don't have to make it worse. We don't have to You're very welcome, Angela. Thank you. Hard to please guy, you had a dream about the Grinch. So what this was about tonight is about understanding and protecting your mental health and healing your childhood wounds and building healthier relationships. So then awareness creates understanding. Boundaries create safety, and healing creates freedom. So you're not responsible for saving everyone, but you are responsible for healing yourself. That's all. That's all. Okay. So I hope that this was helpful. And does anybody have any questions? Can trauma cause personality disorders? I think we answered that with a yes. Can people with BPD heal? They can if they want to, but you can't heal them. And they have to do certain things to heal. They have to work on it, not just in their head. They need to get help. Folk agreed and stay out of mainstream media. Yes. Yes, you got to watch the media. Media will have you catastrophizing and all kinds of stuff. So what's a trauma response versus a personality disorder? So a trauma response is when we're trying to survive the personality disorder, right? All right, hold on a minute. Even though we're just, where did I do? There we go. All right, so how can avoidance heal their attachment style? Well, they have to want to, and it probably needs to go back and look at therapy. And one of my avoidant relationships with somebody who was an avoidant, they can only get so far in a relationship, and then they're going to ghost you or what have you, right? And so they have trauma too. And for this person, his parents were, he grew up with parents that fought, and even it involved shooting and losing a parent. And so that was very traumatic for him, that he couldn't attach any further. And so sometimes this happens, that somebody's experienced such a great deal of trauma, unless they want to heal that trauma, then there's nothing we can do if they don't. A trauma bond means that, you keep going back to the same type of relationship. Say that if you were with somebody who yelled at you before and everything, I had a trauma bond, because a trauma bond means that you've gone through a whole bunch together. Avoidance have fear of rejection. Yes, they do. They do. You're exactly right, Angela. Unless they want to heal that, because they have a deep-seated pain underneath that fear of rejection. Unless they want to heal it, there's nothing we can do. So you're going to end up in we end up in a relationship to where they stay with us a while, then they just avoid us, then they stay with us a while, then they ghost us. And so that's dysregulating. So the trauma bond is like when maybe you're with somebody and you go through a lot together, and it keeps going back and forth like that. That's a trauma bond. And then they're going to change, and they never change. And so you keep just going back and forth with no change. Maybe I'll talk about trauma bond another meeting. How about that, Rodolfo? Trauma bond. Because I could study that more myself, but I have been trauma bonded before. It's just we went through a lot and then I thought that he changed, and he did not change. He did not. Uh-oh. So, are y'all ready to breathe, darlings? Okay, I'll do one on trauma bonds, okay? Maybe, you can mostly do nighttime, right, Rodolfo? Or what? Rodolfo, where are you at? I forgot where you're at. All right, we're about to breathe, darlings. Because breathing, what does it do? It's regulation. Regulation and cell regeneration. Houston. All right, so you're in the same time zone I'm in right now. So you work in the day, or are you off in the day? Because I do another live here on Wednesday, y'all, at 9 a.m. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, if you've been here and haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, and so you can come on when I'm here and I can see you again. You're retired. Okay, awesome. So I'll be back on here Wednesday morning, and we'll talk about trauma bond, okay? Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. your time. Let me remind y'all that next Friday, I'm going to come on here at 6. So I'll put a post in here that I'm coming on at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time instead of 7. So we'll start coming on at 6 in our evening ones. Having all these things happen to us in our early years can have a domino effect later. And life does sound valid. Exactly. I know y'all are like me. I thought once I got grown, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And maybe I didn't, but I didn't heal what I was trying not to do. I didn't heal the pain from those other things. So I had a friend, a sponsor. She used to say, you can do it now or you can do it later. So I've learned through a few butt kickings to do it now rather than later. What time? Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. That's what time zone you're in. So 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. All right. So let's breathe, darlings. Let's breathe. Okay. I'm going to go into a meditation after this. You're very welcome. Yep, Robbie. I know. I know. We get tired of them butt whoopings, don't we? I used to have a guy that he was from East Texas, and he used to say, I just ain't got the hustle in me anymore. you know? So here we go. Let's take our deep breath in. We're doing 5 of these. If you're new, we're going to breathe, regulate, and regenerate our cells. Angela, you are so welcome, Angela. Thank you for being here. I always appreciate your participation and input. You're amazing. So, all right. Y'all ready to breathe? Thank you. All right, let's take a deep breath in. Fill up your tummy, your shoulders will rise, your heart will open, your mind will too. Hold it. And release gently and slowly out of your mouth. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. Breathe. Hold it. Release. Just 2 more. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. Last one. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. Thank you all so much, Rodolfo, Robbie, Angela, Pam. Thank you. All right. Very good. Thank you. I'm glad, Robbie. Thank you so much. You have a good night, Ramon. I see you or your lady tomorrow, right? And so, McGlove, thank you so much. Good luck with the job. And yeah. All right. Thanks so much, Pam. It will publish afterwards. I know you've probably had a lot of things going on. Oh, no, I'm still here. Okay, I'm going to go now though, because I'm going to go meditate now. Thank you all for being here. I sure do appreciate you. What's an offensive word? Oh, yeah. I figured something happened. What's an offensive word, my glove, before I go? Water, I've been talking. All right. Aw. Well, that was fun, wasn't it? All right. Bye. Oh, that was not nice, wasn't it, my glove? No. So we're gonna leave. How about that? I look forward to seeing you next time, my glove, and seeing how it goes. Thank you so much. All right. All right. I will see y'all later. I'm gonna go meditate now. All right. Much love. See you Wednesday at 9 a.m. Thank you, my glove. We'll see you. You're welcome, Pam. All right. Good night, y'all. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I have to learn how to do that. Okay. Thank you. Good night, y'all. Good night, Robbie.